user of the language. An ideal self would be any native speaker in that room. An ought to self would be what is that I need to become on the way of becoming this, so as not to lose face here in front of you. And the learning experience has to do with how I learned the language and what happens there. I'd like to talk a little bit about the notion of heteronormativity, and there have been very many definitions of what it is and what it isn't. Some of them are here. I like the first one a lot, and I tend to use it when I describe it, because just in a dictionary you will find heteronormativity being defined as the view of heterosexuality as the norm, but really, if we look through these definitions, it's much more than that. There is all the political dimensions there. It is the aspects of natural, self-evident, desirable, privileged, and necessary. And what really this tells us, or it implies, is that it's not just something that is out there, is that this something is used by people in ways that help them achieve things. And some of those things have to do with production and commercial trends. You said there is no reference to your sexual orientation, so obviously this is targeted to the people who in the previous question said no. Does this make you feel unmotivated? And obviously we had looked for motivation with other parameters before, and 65% or 67% of them said, yes, we feel unmotivated, very unmotivated, that's the area here. And in a very similar question where I focused on whether they have the language, the vocabulary relevant to their sexual orientation, again, 64, I think, percent here, they say, yes, we are not motivated at all. The next two questions were open-ended, so I asked them if they would like to see references in their course books, what and how would you like this to happen? And this was addressed to people of all sexual orientations, so people who identified themselves as being attracted to people of a different sex. Again, they answered these questions, and I categorized them in positive, neutral, and negative towards having references in course books. 65% said, yes, why not? Let's have references like real life stories or as many as possible. There was a 20% that was negative, as in why should we include those? And in the next question, that was, we need to do something so that we get this material done from the people who need to do that. Yes?
Speaking as a course book writer, and one, in a way, I know I'm not the only one with Ben and people sitting here who've tried to address some of these things and tried to sneak them through the back door in course books. And I know how hard it is to get things past publishers, and I know how kind of covert you have to be with things. I do wonder if there's a bigger issue, okay, which is way beyond the course book issue, which is really to do with teachers' fears of having to deal with what they will have to deal with in the classroom, and that actually, I think that's the fundamental issue.
Yes.
And that what course book publishers are reacting against is a fear from teachers of having to deal with the homophobic crap that they're going to get from students. And you know, every teacher who's been teaching for a long period of time is going to have had those students who make horrifically kind of homophobic comments in the classroom when you have to deal with stuff. And that's actually a much bigger issue.
I agree with you.
Equipping teachers with a framework and a way of talking about and dealing with those kind of issues when they come up in the classroom. And teachers are sort of led to believe you shouldn't impose your views on students, you have to respect diversity, and then you have to listen to students telling you gay people should die and this kind of thing. And you know, yourself never equips you with that unless you're very, very lucky. And I think that's a much bigger issue that there's real need for. I think it's easy to kind of look at course books and see course books as the problem. But I think the issue is obviously much, much broader than that.
It's both ways, isn't it? I mean, when you go to a pre-service course, we teach our teachers how to use a course book and how to adapt and how to change, because obviously it's as much as you can do. But if we don't have the material, how can we train our new teachers on how to use LGBT material if it's not out there? So it has to be out there. So for the X organisation and institution to change their syllabus and adopt and give us the tools that we need to train our teachers on how to use the material, how to address the things in the classroom. So I think it's both ways, but I do agree teachers need education. Yes, please?
So